Tax Commission at 1051 North Third Street, Suite 225, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The date is Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. The time is 9:30 a.m. Please call the roll. 9 o'clock, sorry.
Chairman Roussel,
Here.
Commissioner Leone,
Here.
Commissioner Romick,
Here.
Commissioner Guidry,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier,
Here.
5 present and a quorum.
Thank you. There being no old business to come before the commission, we'll move on to the approval of minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes as
We have a
presented by
motion to
staff.
approve the minutes from July 24th, 2024. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Next item to be considered is change orders.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 379 change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve 363 and place 16 in pending status. Staff requests approval of these change orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 363 change orders and place 16 in pending status for reasons given by staff.
We have a motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Do we have any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Prior pending change orders.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 20 prior pending change orders. Staff has reviewed those change orders and requests to approve 14 and keep 6 remaining in pending status. Staff requests approval of the prior pending change orders.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 14 prior pending change orders as presented by staff and to keep 6 remaining in pending status.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. Consideration of tax sale cancellation.
Chandrika Banks on behalf of the Louisiana Tax Commission. Today, we have a total of 4 tax sale cancellations, 1 in Lincoln Parish, 2 in Washita Parish, and 1 in EBR Parish, all for being erroneously sold. Staff requests approval of 4 tax sale cancellations.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the 4 tax sale cancellations.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. We'll move on to appeals. Mr. Hoffman.
Good morning. I'm an attorney for the Tax Commission. If you'll be testifying in any of today's appeals, I'll have you stand up. I'm going to administer an oath to you. You'll raise your right hand. I'll ask you to affirm the oath, and I'll also ask you to state your name. You'll do this individually when I indicate to you. You can go ahead and stand up. I'll administer the oath to everyone at the same time. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Russell Almaraz, I do.
Thank you. I do. Your name? Your name? Ryan Dufresne. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Jackie Kenshin.
Thank you. Y'all may have a seat. Appraisers, I'll administer an oath to you. If you'll raise your right hand, I'll indicate to you individually to affirm the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Mark?
I do.
Joshua?
I do.
Mike?
I do.
Thank you.
Call the first appeal.
Good morning, everyone.
1 second.
My name is Jackie Kenshin.
It's okay. The first appeal we'll take up for today is the appeal of Jackie H. Baptiste versus Assessor L.G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221730211.
Ms. Jackie, you can go.
Again, good morning. My name is Jackie Kenshin. And the basis of my argument is the unjust and unfair unit value assessed to my property. First of all, it's a vacant lot. The site, 6240 Franklin Avenue, New Orleans, 70122. It's a corner lot, and it does have its disadvantages. It's located on a main thoroughfare, heavy, constant traffic, and vibrations daily commercial trucks, public transportation, peak hours, and arena event traffic. The site is located near two larger properties with a lower and a lesser unit value. One is 6125 LaFayette Street, which is 6,830 square feet with a unit value of $8.78. The other, 2555 Frankfurt Street, 6,394 square feet with a unit value of $9.23. Therefore, I feel penalized because of the location of my property. The footage of my property is only 5,565 square feet. And the Office of Orleans Parish Assessor has added an additional 5 square feet, and I don't know why, making it 5,570 square feet, which is incorrect. So I'm here seeking revaluation of my property with the hope of lowering the unit valuation cost, which will lower my tax. And this is why I'm here. These are the reasons I'm appealing.
Thank you. Mr. Alvarez,
Um,
City of New Orleans.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. The property is 5,565 square feet, which is what we have in our database. The property was revalued using mass appraisal. There's a number of sales. We provided that as our exhibits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties that have sold. The average price per square foot is $12.81 a square foot. The median is $12.97. Normally, the assessor's office goes down a little bit from the average square foot to be a little more consistent. We put the entire neighborhood at $12 a square foot. I think the issue with the value is, I think Ms. Jackie is saying that we've rounded. So $10 a square foot would be 55,650. The assessor's office rounds to the nearest hundred place. So it's 55,700 is the value. That doesn't mean that we added 5 extra square feet. We just round. So we're asking the commission to uphold the BOR's value. I believe our sales justify a higher value. The tax mission staff appraisal supports our value. Sales support our value, and that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Can we hear from Mr. Bolton, the LTC appraiser?
I appraised this property on April 23rd. I inspected.
Ted, you want to sit here?
Definitely, I'm good. I inspected the property on April 23rd. The square footage that I used was 5,565 square feet, and my value was $55,700 for the lot.
Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for, I'm sorry, Commissioner Frazier. I have a question for City of New Orleans. So I'm used to having a uniform assessment for land per neighborhood.
Mhm.
You testified that uniformity in that area is $12 a square, but you're valuing this at the $10 a square.
No, sir. The sales warrant a value of $12 to almost $13 a square foot. So we valued it at $10. We don't like to go at 100% of fair market value for land.
So is the $10 uniform for adjacent properties in this neighborhood?
Yes, it should be. The only thing I could see would be if there is some kind of economy of scale for oversized properties. The higher square footage you have, the lower price per square foot you would get. Same thing as if you had a 1,000 square foot house versus a 3,000 square foot house. I don't know for sure the examples that the taxpayer brought up. We were not given any exhibits to look through and scrutinize, but as far as I can know, every value in that neighborhood is consistently $10 a square foot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Frazier?
You answered that question. I had to.
Okay.
Any questions? Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I hear a motion? Ms. Jackie, go ahead.
I have a question. Why was it increased? And be reminded, it's a vacant lot, no improvement. But it was increased 2.5 times more from the previous year. It was 22,300 in 23, and 24 is 55,700. That's 2.5 times more. I just can't figure out that. What's happening there?
I'm not sure as the historical valuation of the property. I didn't really do a very detailed review of it. I can tell the taxpayer that this property is based on current fair market value as of 1/1/23. The prior valuation should have been 1/1/2019, 4 years ago. There's a possibility that it wasn't revalued in 19, so the value may be even further back than that. There was an issue where we didn't do the entire city at once previously. We did a core of the city each year. So this may be a situation where it's longer than 4 years from the last revaluation, if that makes sense.
But the new value is based on the new millennial, the new quadrennial that you set across the board for the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
I have a
What?
question, Mr. Chairman. Just listening to what Ms. Jackie was saying. Ms. Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong. You paid 22,300. Was that a year ago or 2 years ago?
23, that was what the assessment was in 23.
You paid 22,300.
You're saying in dollars? No, that's what the
The taxes on your property.
tax assessed on the property
Okay.
in 23.
Okay.
And then in 24, it went up 2.5 times more. It went up from 22,300 to 55,700. Two and a half times more. And I feel they're penalizing me because I have a corner lot.
Any other questions from a commission?
I got some. This is for the assessor's office and the tax commission appraiser. This is the lots y'all provided that we have comps on. These are vacant land lot sales, correct? And
Yes,
so
sir.
this is what we're basing our appraisal was recent vacant lot sale.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I just wanted to make sure we all understood.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the LTC staff appraisal of 55,700.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
The next appeal we'll take up is the appeal of Brian A. Dufresne versus Assessor L.G. Williams and the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-77039.
Good morning.
By surprise, I thought we were number 5.
You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Am I too close? Okay. All right, thanks. First off, I want to thank the committee for all of their attention. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to present to you, and then I'm going to go over it in detail. The purpose of our, what we want to talk about today is our continuing increases in taxes. And then I'm going to review that, and then I'm going to review a sample of the Black Pearl neighborhood that I did a research on. And then I'm gonna review what we learned from the many videos I watched, and that's why I thank you for your time, because I saw how long it takes. And then what we gleaned from all of that, our observations. So I believe you all have lots of stuff I sent, even an Excel sheet. And the first one is a summary of our taxes. I did a tax summary of 509 Adams. And if you'll see in 2016-17, we had a reasonable increase from 12%. It was 39% in land though, and that's the kind of pattern. In 2021, we were increased 50% in our taxes from 441 to 636. And at that time, the land was $126,000. It wasn't changed. In 2023, we went from 500,000 to 600, and we appealed that year in 2021. We just appealed it to the parish, not here. And they gave us a break to 34%. And then in 23, we went from $500,000 to 698. For land, that was 110% increase. Overall, for all of it was 47 to 40% if you looked at the assessed value or the appraised value. And then we appealed it at the parish, and they did make an offer. And so we're at this point where, okay, where do, we recognize that they did negotiate with us. So then we looked at our house. In our house, we bought it in 2009. I think I made an error on my sheet and I put 2015, but it's 2009. We've owned our house for 15 years. The comparables couldn't find one similar to ours in 1.5 baths. We're at the point in life that we only need really 1 bath and a half a bath for company. Every other comparable had 2 bathrooms or more, which when you're buying property, that's a big deal. We have structural problems that would be a significant amount of money. We've had twice companies come out and give us bids on, if you walk in our dining room, you kind of go downhill. Our kitchen since 1995 has not been, I looked at all the appliances when we bought. We have an attic in the house. We have our hot water heater in the attic that we have to climb on the roof to get to. We have no new building materials or any kind of technology. We did paint it in 2023, the outside. So our house, I would say, didn't compare as far as I think one of the appraisals had a big redo. The other one was a brick home. So that caught my attention. And I said, wow, I talked to my neighbors and my immediate neighbors in my block. And I said, did y'all have an increase? And one of them said, yeah, my next door neighbor did have an increase. But then I said, wait a minute, this is twice 2 significant increases. And I'm a therapist and a professor. And so I said, I got to look at the neighborhood. Something's just not right here. And so I did a sample. Of 4 streets, Adams, which is ours, Burdette, Hillary, Cherokee in 3 blocks, and 1 street, Pearl, for 5 blocks. And I looked at the assessor's website and used all their data on their website. And what I noticed is out of 113 houses in that Black Pearl neighborhood, only 21 houses had 31% increase or more. In fact, the house that is one of the comparables on Burdette went up 50%. And of course, the other thing I noticed was land was increased 106%. for a lot of these houses. All of the increases went to land, not your home. And I did look at, okay, where I noticed where the increases are, where were, and those were 30% or more. I didn't, in my summary, I didn't include there's 83 houses that there was 0 to 29%, and then 9 houses that were reductions, and some of them you could tell were because of some of the assessment laws of age and things like that. In fact, if you notice on the bottom of my sheet, not only were certain houses had extreme increases, but it was a pattern of the streets. If you look at Adams, on Adams for 3 blocks, 4 houses had an increase. On Burdette, 4 houses had an increase. Hillary, which is a little bit longer, had 6 houses with an increase. Cherokee had 3 houses, and back to Pearl had 4. So there's not only a pattern of an increase, a significant increase, but there was a pattern of how many houses on a street, which caught my attention. And I thought about my neighbors, and as I said, I'm a therapist, and I realized that some of my neighbors are not familiar with assessments. Some of them wouldn't know how to do an appeal. Some of them realized that they felt like they were being singled out, but they wouldn't know how to learn about that process and why some people's houses were increased and others weren't. And that's my initiative and my husband's initiative to say, wait a minute, we want to learn about this. What has happened here in Orleans Parish? And so what I did was I watched you all for quite a long time. Not as long as you've been up here, but I did watch lots of videos, probably 40 appeals. I'm estimating, but probably 40 appeals. I even downloaded some transcripts that stuck out for me because I said, oh, wait a minute, that's part of our learning process. Maybe this explains what's happening. And so as I heard earlier with Jackie, and as I heard in many of the videos, it was people like a young lady with a child to a young man that I remember not understanding why his increased and his neighbors didn't, to attorneys, to other professionals, and very similar to what my neighborhood is. If you're not familiar with the Black Pearl, it's a very diverse neighborhood, even though it's uptown and not far from Tulane. It's got diverse population. I walk my neighborhood all the time for exercise, and so I know the houses in my neighborhood, and I don't know every one of my neighbors, but I make an effort to be aware of what's going on in my neighborhood. And so what did I hear from the videos? I didn't hear it today. We've only heard one person speak, but I did hear the poor communication that happens between people in the assessment office. I heard that the assessor somehow doesn't listen to what people say, that they don't provide documents that are requested. And I can tell you, I personally called the assessor's office, and when I decided to appeal for Baton Rouge, I called and said, can I get the appraiser's document of what was done on our house? No, you can't have that. So I said, oh, maybe I got the wrong person. Let me call back another day. And I called back and was told, well, no, we can't mail you that. You can come in and get it. And I thought, well, wait a minute, you mail me all my other documents. Why can't you mail me this appraisal? You have to come in and get it. And those are the kind of things that I thought myself, my personal experience, and what I heard as far as people's unhappiness or fears of what was happening with taxes in New Orleans. Overall, and the other thing that I heard in the videos were that people accepted the land going up with no question. It's like, okay, that's land. I can compare the difference between my house because this one has a bathroom and this one doesn't, but I can't compare land. It was pretty much accepted. The other thing I noticed when I looked at the houses was um, just in my neighborhood, the numerous errors. Now, errors happen, and I know I make them, as everybody does. But I hope that that will be gleaned from the assessor's office that maybe we need to use all of this technology to look at what are we assessing. For example, let's see if I can find that. In your summary, on the sample that I sent, there's a house on Hillary Street that is really a new house, maybe 2 years old. It was listed on the assessor's 307 Hillary for 1,500 square feet. I can tell you that house is huge. It's not 1,500 square foot house. There's 310 Hillary, if you look at that assessment, it says it has a white house, but there's no house square footage in the assessment. And there's a White House on it. It's pictured in the assessor's office, and I know it is because I walk there. There's a building, 2,403 square footage, and the property is 900 square foot in my neighborhood. Kind of hard to believe. So I noticed those things. But the most frequent thing that I heard in listening to the videos was that people were being singled out. They said consistently, my taxes went up, but my neighbors didn't. So what do we glean from all of this? And I'm going to let my husband talk sooner or later. These are some of the quotes that I took from listening to the appeals. On March 27th, I heard Orleans Parish appraiser say that
Ma'am, excuse me,
sorry.
I'm gonna stop you.
Okay,
Let's talk about your appeal and the specifics. We're now gonna talk about quotes from other meetings and from the past. Let's
Okay.
get back on point, please.
okay. Let me see if I can summarize this. I understand that appraisers are done uniformly and systematically, but it seems like from the research project that I did and our own personal experience of our increase of 50% or more, that everyone's not being taxed the same or similar. And I do not understand the CAM system, and I've read a lot about it, but there's really no explanation of how Orleans Parish is using it. And I would welcome that interest because we don't want to be here next year with another increase, and it seems like that's occurring. So I respectfully will honor whatever the committee agrees on as far as our reassignment of dollars. And my husband will add whatever he wants to add.
If you look at the top number on the line, the program that the assessor uses came up with a number that he agrees is wrong. Yet that number is going to be carried from year to year. How is it that we can address the fact that the algorithms that they use and the data that he throws out at us come up with a wrong number, and yet it's our burden every couple of years to come up here. Pretty soon, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I'm just going to be at the whim of whatever program they're using. I wish there was more transparency on that, and I'm hoping the tax commission and the auditors that look at what goes on at the New Orleans assessment can look at how they use the algorithms and you look at the algorithms themselves and how they use them, that we come up with these kind of errors that you see or these over assessments. I understand uniformity. If it's applied to a population that is not uniform, what you have is 50% of the people under assessed and 50 over assessed. And the magnitude of that according to the limited study that we did in the Black Pearl area, is pretty big. It looks like about 40% of the people are either overassessed or underassessed. And that doesn't, that seems to be a problem.
Thank you. Any other comment from
Okay.
New Orleans Assessor's Office, Mr. Russell?
Yes. Let's see. So this property is a single-family property located in a Black Pearl neighborhood. Our CAM evaluation did come up with a value of $698,300. It was appealed to the Board of Review. At the Board of Review, the taxpayer provided a fee simple appraisal of the property, which came out at a value of $585,000. The Board of Review reduced it further from the appraisal to $580,000. We performed a fee simple appraisal of the property, which is consistent with the valuation of $587,000, which is right in line with the the appraisal done by Mr. Michael Toso for $585,000. The insurance value, based on the information gleaned by the taxpayer, it's insured for $408,000. Not saying that that's what it should be, but if you take the 408 plus the land value, that's $674,000, which is fairly close to our initial valuation. We're asking that the tax commission at least affirm the Board of Review's value, because the Board of Review's value is based on documentation provided by the taxpayer themselves. It's listed as a good condition in the taxpayer's appraisal. It was done for July 26, 2023, which is 6 months past the lien date, which was used to value 2024. I reviewed the information provided by the taxpayers. There's a lot of misleading information in that. It's a summary of every property type, regardless of whether it's a 500, a vacant lot, single-family duplex, triplex, regardless of whether or not it has a assessment level of a age freeze or a disability freeze. That skews increases, so that makes some increases seem like they're higher because others are not increasing because they're frozen. The other issue that I would say is that there is nothing that says that every property needs to be increased by a consistent value or a consistent percentage. If you are undervalued and if you're at 450 and your neighbor's at 5 and you both go up to 550, he's gone up 50,000, you've gone up 100,000, but you're at the same level. Percentage looks different, but that doesn't mean that you are valued incorrectly. This just means that your value went up a different percentage. So I would think that the commission should affirm the Board of Review's value, considering that the taxpayer themselves provided an appraisal. The appraisal by the staff is also supportive of the 580,000. It's a little bit lower at 550. There are some issues that we think that are not really necessarily errors with the staff appraisal. It's just certain things that might adjust it or denote for a difference in between 585 and 550 is that one of the comps, the seller is in the note says agent related to seller. So that to me doesn't seem like that would be a arm's length transaction. And there's no, it may be a typo. It says that it's average condition, exterior from the street only view. There's some photos attached. So I don't know if that was a typo, but it's in the ballpark. I just feel that that's also supportive. It's like 30,000 from the Board of Review's value, which was based on the appraisal done by the taxpayer, not by our office. So if you use the good condition or even just use the taxpayer staff appraisal, adjusted the condition to good, like the fee simple appraisal done by the taxpayer's representative, it would probably come up to about 580,000. So we think that's a good value.
Okay, thank you. Can we hear from the LTC tax appraiser, Mark?
Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraised the property at 509 Adams Street and spoke with the taxpayer, and his primary concern, I think, was what he conveyed to me is that the bathrooms, we've got 1.5 bathrooms, and just about all the sales that I found had 2. So I made an adjustment for that. I found the property to be in average condition, and using the sales approach, I determined the fair market value to be $550,000.
Thank you. questions from the commission?
I have just one question, Mr. Chairman. I was listening to the taxpayers and everything, and one thing kind of stuck out in my head, and help me, Mr. Russell, if you can. The taxpayers said that there wasn't enough transparency in what goes on. Is that something that we may be having an issue with trying to convey to the taxpayers what all it is that they need and what they should come prepared for to know exactly what it is that's going to happen today?
I mean, we could always do a better job of communication, but as far as transparency, there's no lack of transparency. We're the most transparent assessor's office in the entire state. We put more information on our website than any other assessor. We are very transparent. Now, we don't always do a great job communicating. Sometimes there's misunderstandings, such as the taxpayer stating that the valuation was not changed on our website. That's not something that we do. We keep our initial valuation. We change the assessed value. Taxes are based on assessments and not valuations. So that way a taxpayer can see it started here, the Board of Review, lowered it to this. The tax commission lowered it to this. So there's denotations on our website, codes that say LTC 24. Oh, this is the tax commission value. BOR 23. This is a Board of Review value. So you can see the entire progression, and any change orders that are done are denoted at the bottom of our website, right there, so everyone can see. So communication, there's always improvement for communication. We can always improve communication, but as far as transparency, I'm not sure how we can get more transparent.
Thank you, Mr. Russ.
I have a question for the taxpayers. So y'all submitted an appraisal to the Board of Review that was valued at $580,000?
Yes, sir. You want to know Mike's appraisal?
Oh, yeah, I discussed it with several appraisers and I would welcome, a complete evaluation of our property to see how much, variance it is. Cause I don't know how that could be conducted without actually going through the house and doing those things, and welcome to do that. And look, I thank the assessor for the assessor's office and the representative for making the effort to adjust this, but and he said they're not going to change that top number. So his computer, his program thinks that's what my house is worth. And he doesn't think that anymore, and I don't think it's that anymore. Something's wrong with that.
Mr. Chair, I have
Any other questions by the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. For the taxpayer, first a statement. I respect all the effort that you put forward in your research. I just want to make sure my understanding is clear of, with the Board of Review adjustment to the 580,000, that matches an appraisal that you had, correct? And you're asking for 180,000 of land, 320,000 of improvements for a total of 500 is what your appeal is for, correct?
We did when we did the 500,000, what we requested. We didn't know about this land thing, so we just split it like they had and went with the land, whatever they had, and reduced the other number.
So really, that's where the difference lies, is in the land. The assessor and both the LTC appraisal have the land at 266,000, which is right just over 80,000 more than what you're appealing for. Okay. So for the tax assessor, once again, the uniformity of the land across that area, Black Pearl is uniformly at $35 a square for land.
Yes, sir.
So that's all even
Yes, sir.
across the board. Okay. And just to confirm, Mark, if you would, just to confirm your comps included 517 Cherokee
Yes, sir.
and Russell,
Sale
yours
too.
as well.
I'm sorry.
I was asking Russell just to confirm that his comps included 517 Cherokee as well.
I'll pull it up.
I see.
I see that, just for the record.
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, call a motion for the parish board review valuation of 266,000 of land, 314,000 improvements, a total of 580,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just for the assessor's office, so what the taxpayer is looking for is going forward, their taxable assessment will not be the 698.3 as the original assessment. It will be adjusted to the 580 that's being agreed upon here.
Yes, sir. Taxable assessment will reflect that. The initial market value will not. That way you can see the entire gamut of valuations on there. And it will be denoted LTC 24.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing? And the other thing we're asking for is transparency on how that CAM is being used.
We
Yeah,
can't answer that, ma'am. That's not within our purview.
Yeah, I'm not
I know,
asking
the
you.
assessor has the right to use whatever program he just uses. Our job is to interpret the value, do our own appraisal, and then try to come up what we think is the accurate value.
Okay.
Okay. So we had a motion. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. If you'd like. You could get down with me at some point when we're not doing the open vote period. I don't have a card. You can come and sit down with me. We could discuss this.
The next appeal we'll take up is the appeal of Jacob Heigl versus Assessor L.G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221-76097.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Yvonne. Can y'all hear me? My name's Yvonne Barlow. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother-in-law, Joan Shao. She doesn't. So the property at 3321 Chippewa Street. We're requesting that value that the Board of Review recommended be changed at least to the value of the Louisiana Tax Commission. We've been appealing this property for 20 years. We've had to deal with this. Back in 2019, the property value in total was reduced to 17,210 for the assessed value. In 20, 21, 22, and 23, it was at the same value. The 2024, when the new assessment came out, it increased from 15,000 to 39,240. The building or land improvements increased in the original assessed value 450% from the prior 5 years. The land was a 40% increase. So we went to the city and we went to do the appeal. The Board of Review reduced it to 252, which they kept the land at the same amount because I know recently, I think just about everybody had a 40% increase in land. And they changed the value of the building, but it was still a 215% increase from prior years. And then looking at the two appraisals, I just think that the city of New Orleans, when they get their assessors and they get their appraisers to go out, they need to be appraising and doing appraisals, do a better job of appraisals as far as comparables. The appraisals that they're using or the comparables that they're using, one of them is a house that's listed as being built in 2010. This house was built they moved in this house in 1916. She was born and raised in a house. Nothing's really been updated. If you look at the inside of the house, the bathroom has really not been updated. The kitchen has one little cabinet from Home Depot, basic countertop from Home Depot. Can go, linoleum on the floors, old panel, the whole inside. The appraisal that was done, they didn't even go in the inside of the house. They looked at the outside and compared it to properties, all which have been newly renovated, marble, countertops, and also the house is on Chippewa Street, and I don't know if y'all familiar with that area. When you stand on the front porch, across the street, there's one little double, and the rest of the block across the street, it was a business, and it's the back end of a parking garage. It's got the the things on the top to keep you from crawling over the fence. Barbed wire, it's like the street. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. The sidewalk in front of our house is cement. The next door neighbors, it's all grass and bricks, and the next door down the street, it's bricks. It's not even a complete sidewalk. wanted the board of, the assessor's office for the city, the neighborhood 7th Street, it's a neighborhood which most of the houses have been updated, the sidewalks are all in place, you know. Yes, yeah, you can't talk. I was gonna say, the house on Chippewa, it's on the right off the corner, Louisiana and Chapatulas. The house on 7th Street that they're comparing it to is a block off a Magazine, which is a prime location. The house on Chapatulas that they're comparing it to is up by Tipitina's, the brewery, in the prime area. The house on her house, you got Line Center, so you got people trafficked all up and down the street. The Louisiana side's got Line Center, the business. The Teledana Street has another warehouse-looking business. The back of a house, a metal building. It's not comparable. And I just think that it would save you all time and it would save the city time if they did a better job when the assessors went out of making comparables before they come up with an assessed value. I mean, I just think that I've been doing this a long time with them, and it just feels like it's the same old story and the same old, we keep going through the same process. And I guess, when we went to meet with the city, I kind of was a little, I don't want to say offended, but I didn't think it was appropriate. The person at the city we spoke to, he was like, wow, how did you all get a appraised value at assessed value at $15,000? I don't know how y'all ever got that. That's ridiculous. I would have thought that. Well, are you trying to make up for it now because you think we've been paying too low all these years? All we ever did is we hired an appraisal back in the day. When we first started this process, we got our own appraisal. We submitted it. It was reduced. And ever since, we show that nothing's been done on this house in probably 60 years. Maybe a little thing here or there. Some of the ceilings are messed up. It's got old heaters on the wall that's being held up. It's just, if you look at the inside of the house based on the Louisiana Tax Commission's appraisal, you can see what the condition of the house looks like. It's just no way is that house worth $290,000 and shouldn't be compared to a house built or remodeled currently or in 2010. Well, a 19th century, 1930 or 1940 house.
Thank you.
Yes.
More?
I'm sorry. I think I said everything.
Thank you. We'll hear from the New Orleans Assessor's Office.
If I heard correctly, the taxpayer mentioned something about the Board of Reviews value, them being okay with the Board of Reviews
No, I
value?
said the Louisiana Tax Commission's value.
Okay.
I'm
That's-
sorry.
'cause
My
I heard the
apologies.
Board
I
of
said
Reviews
the Board
value.
of Review reduced it to 252 and I would be acceptable with the Louisiana Tax Commission's value of 190.
Okay, no problem. Just trying to clear it all up.
Did I say that? I am so sorry.
Cause that was actually our
You want-
prayer, was the Board of Reviews value, even though our appraisal was higher than that. So I could have saved us all a bunch of time. So we took a look at this property. Let me get the particulars. This property is documented to be in fair condition. Our initial valuation was $392,400. The Board of Review did lower it based on fair condition. I can't comment as to the taxpayer's comments about what she experienced at the Board of Review's value. That is not the assessor's office. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that, or whether or not any of that was actually there. The assessor's office did submit an appraisal as a fair condition property for $293,000. Let me see.
Ridiculous.
$293,000 using $500 using all fair condition sales. Took a look at the information provided. The only issue is the $190,000 value by staff. We don't think that that is a accurate indicator of value. So for instance, comp one is on the lake side of St. Charles. It's not in the same appraisal area. It's in an inferior neighborhood and there's no adjustment that was made. Comp number two, I think this might have been a typo. The MLS number was wrong. So the sale that we were able to look up, it was actually a succession sale. This estate of Linda Diane Dervany, NA number 2022-46933. It was sold in the tax commission staff appraisal value for $175,000. However, just 1 month later, it was flipped for $200,000, which is higher than what it's the higher sale. It's in the same quadrennial, so I'm not sure why the staff didn't use the $200,000 sale and use the $175,000. I think the only sale that we have in common is 3820 Constant Street. That's their highest comparable. And to be honest, and I didn't catch this before today, neither one of us should have used that because it's also a succession sale. It's a succession of Clara Peck, wife of Cleveland Sland Sr. So neither one of us should have used it. However, it is the highest sale of all of them. And I think based on the comp number one not being in the neighborhood and comp number two being sold for a higher value, I think that would support, if you took into consideration some of those adjustments, that would kind of get us close to the border view value of 252, which is really only 15% lower than our value that we did of our fee simple appraisal. And I know it may not look like that, but the appraiser who did the appraisal for our office is a licensed fee simple appraiser with the state of Louisiana, has been appraising for 30 years. So he's did his due diligence.
But in his appraisal, he does mention too, he based the appraisal basically on the exterior of the house, nothing to do with the interior of the house. And so are you saying that, I'm just questioning, is the interior of the house not being, I mean, if I was going to buy a house and a house had been newly renovated in the last 5 to 10 years, or I was going to buy a house that was not that, I would surely consider the increases in the value of what I bought the house for over a house that hadn't been updated since maybe 1950.
Well, ma'am, we put it in fair condition. That is the lowest condition you can have without it being gutted to the studs and about to fall down. And unfortunately, we're like vampires. You have to invite us in. We just can't go into your
Right,
house
we don't-
without
Well, if you'd
an
asked, we'd
invitation.
brought you in.
So if you'd like, we can make an appointment to get documentation and take photo documentation, but we can't go into your house without
Yeah.
your express invitation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Russell. Can we hear from Josh, LTC tax appraiser?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Joshua Laverne, LTC appraiser. I performed an exterior and an interior inspection of the property at 3321 Chippewa Street. I utilized the sale comparison approach. That approach produced a value of $190,000, $128,000 to the land, and $62,000 to the improvement.
Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Laverne. I appreciate the photos that were included. That certainly was considered in your determination of the property as fair.
Yes, sir. 100%. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm along the lines with Mr. Gregory. I guess it does matter when you go inside a property and see basically what it looks like. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Josh? It made that big of a difference?
Well, seeing the damage or, some of the deficiencies in the interior certainly attributed to my valuation.
I have a question for Mr. Laverne. I guess, my habit is to look at comps. I know both you and the city use 3820 constants, but now I'm hearing that that comp shouldn't be included. When I look at the average of all the sales from your appraisals to the city's appraisals, that average is 260,000. But again, it seems like the comps aren't comps to this property. Would you agree with that statement?
I would say that finding comps with similar deficiencies as the subject property is a challenge.
Thank you.
If it please the commission, I have to echo what Mr. Laverne said. Due to the condition, it is difficult to find comparables.
Additional questions from the commission? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to, because of the difficulties in the comps, I'm looking at the assessor's request of 252, the LTC of 190. I'm proposing somewhere in the middle of 221,000, land at 128,000, improvements at 93,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
So what's the value now? Like,
The motion was for 221,000 total.
Next, we have the appeal of David G. Keffer versus Assessor L.G. Williams and Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221777079.
Good morning. Just for a little bit of context, this property is adjacent to my home, which is just on the other side of the avenue of the house that was on Pearl Street that you heard before the last property. This is in the neighborhood of a lot of rental conversions for two-lane students, which can kind of sway the property values a bit. But I'm here for two reasons. The first has to do with it's covered extensively in my cover letter and the exhibits that I provided to the LTC and the board. And it has to do with the issue of the accessory use classification that was changed 27 years ago after it had been confirmed by the assessor's office when I purchased the property. Why that happened and, you know, the reasoning behind it escapes me. I've never been given a good explanation. I've tried to anticipate what the reasons are, and that's covered in my cover letter also. Really, the reason I'm here today is because I was told at both the BOR and recently by the assessor's office that it doesn't matter, that that it doesn't matter. They hadn't read the appeal reasoning and take the deal or leave it. So I'm here for that reason. So I'd like the LTC to at least comment on the issue of whether this property can maintain what was historically its accessory use. And again, I gave you lots of reasons and lots of background exhibits and evidence. And then we could move on to the second issue of the valuation and how it was valued. So I don't know.
Our realm of authority is on value, so we're not going to make a determination on the first one
Okay.
whatsoever. That's not within our purview. We
So
do value.
that is simply in the purview of the
That's
assessor's office?
That's a issue between you and the assessor's office
Okay.
and you and the courts, not the
All right.
tax commission.
If you give me a moment, I want to get my notes together. Okay, in terms of the valuation of the property, after the BOR, it first came in, and we're only talking about the building, not the land. I'm not contesting the land value. So in terms of the building value, it was reassessed initially at 184,000. The BOR lowered it to, and again, I'm only talking about the building value. It lowered it to, I think, 44,000 at the BOR. The LTC appraisal came in at 38,000 for the building. Then the assessor's office came back with their appraisal at 47,000 for the building. And then they agreed, and then because I didn't sign the agreement, so I could come before you today, they agreed at the 110,000 property, 38,000 building value. So I looked at the assessor's appraisal. And by the way, I'm an architect. My wife's a real estate agent. I know this neighborhood like the back of my hand. I have some experience in buildings and building value and conditions. And I looked at their comps, and there's a lot of problems with the comps. Probably the primary problem is that this was a drive-by appraisal. They've never seen the interior of this building. I presented images of the interior of this building at the BOR, but the appraisal states that this was essentially a drive-by inspection of the exterior of the building. Now, the interior of the building, which the LTC appraiser had a chance to look at, is essentially a big storage room used as a shop, and there's a lot of images in the file I think you can look at. There's no bathroom, none. There's no kitchen. There's no heating or cooling. There is no water meter to the house. There's a gas meter, but there's nothing hooked up to the gas meter. There's just electricity in this building. I use it as a shop next to my house. It used to be a house many years ago, but it's been a shop for almost 30 years now. And so the basic comps are not really comparable to that condition. Now, if looking at the three comps, there's a couple of other things, aside from the fact that those comps have kitchens and bathrooms and this building does not. The condition that's stated is either fair or average. The condition of this house, when you consider the interior, is poor. And then I did some adjustments based on just the building value, following the numbers in the assessor's appraisal. And I come up with a slightly different value. If I just say everything's the same, they're all comparable, and I take the square footage value of those three comparable buildings and average them, the price should be around $39, $40 a square foot. And I think they're coming in at $53 a square foot, which is higher than any of the comps. And those buildings are in better condition and have kitchens and bathrooms. So I also looked at the LTC appraisal, and I think it's better. I think it's still a little off because one of their buildings was actually in much better condition than mine. But I don't want to get too deep in the details. Maybe if you have questions, I can address those things.
Here from New Orleans City Assessor.
Yes. This property is a single-family home in the East Carrollton neighborhood. The facade looks as a single-family home. It doesn't look as a shop. It's not boarded up. It's legally able to be sold off as a single-family home and has its own square and lot number. We initially valued the property as if it was in average condition, which put it at $254,600. Documentation was supplied to us at the board review to show that the property is in fair condition. We made an offer at the board review for $116,000. It was accepted by the taxpayer at $116,000. He then subsequently appealed afterwards, even though he accepted the value at the board review for $116,000. All appraisals are right in that ballpark, where he accepted the 116 of our recalculation. We did a fee simple appraisal, that's 119. The tax emissions at 110. That 116 is right in the middle of the 110 and 119. It's all in that same ballpark area. This property is in fair condition. That is true. If you use the comparables, or if you look at the comparables in the appraisal that we have it listed as fair condition. I'm not sure where he's getting his price per square foot for building because we don't have it segregated in the appraisal. But the comps that we use, the photos show fair condition properties. The subject property from the street doesn't look to be in fair condition. The fair condition's on the inside. But our first comparable, Leonidas, is overgrown with cat's claw. Generette is not hooked up to power. Neither one of those are really kind of in the ballpark of being habitable. If you look at the tax emissions appraisal value, his comparable, Generette Street, which is actually at 141,900, is boarded up and is completely abandoned, which would be miles different from a painted facade property. So we think that in the light of all this information, the tax commission should affirm the board of use value because that was a settlement between both parties.
Thank you. Can we hear from Mike, the LTC appraiser?
Mike Cater, LTC appraiser. The subject was a residential type property located at 932 Adams. It was basically being used as stated as a workshop storage area. I would consider this kind of a non-typical property. It had interior walls removed. It had no kitchen, it had no bath areas. I completed a sales approach. Similar sales were very limited. I found 3 that were considered the best sales. Adjustments were made in the sales grid based on MLS data and the comments within. final value was $110,000, with 72,000 being land and 38,000 being improvements.
Questions from the commission?
May I comment? The issue of accepting the BOR, when I went through that process, which by the way, when I got to the BOR, they had not looked at any of the information I had sent earlier. They spent literally 1 minute looking at the information I gave, which was cursory at best. And then they made a deal. They just generated some numbers out of their head. I don't know where they came up with the numbers, but that's the numbers they generated. And that's pretty typical. I'd been through that before. And when I left that meeting, and I accepted that offer, I did it on the contingency that I still could come to the LTC, and they told me I could. I would not have accepted that offer if they had told me otherwise. So I think that's a moot point, honestly. Again, the assessor here is telling me his appraisal was based on a drive-by assessment, exterior assessment, which is honestly garbage. If you're looking at a real assessment, I don't see how you get to anything without looking at the interior of the building. The,
Let me ask you a question.
I'm sorry.
Did you invite the assessor into to the building?
I never heard from the assessor. They never called me. I would have been glad to invite them in. It's why I took photographs of the interior of the building. But I never heard from them. They never contacted me, and I would, like I did with the LTC appraisal, I would have been glad to let them in and settle this a lot earlier than all the way to this point. The exterior of the building, I keep up because I'm active in my neighborhood. I've lived there for pretty much all my life. And if anything, the outside of the building is going to look presentable.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Just to be clear, you're not disputing the land value.
I am not.
So the discussion here is between the assessor's request, which was the board of review of 44,000, to the LTC appraisal of 38,000, so a difference of 6,000.
Essentially, yes. If I'd like to go lower based on the arguments I gave, but yes.
Thank you. And for LTC, appreciate the pictures that were included in your upload. There is a comparable. You've rated this property as poor. The condition of 1428 Leonidas is poor as well. And per my record, your assessment of that property was 112,600. So basically 113,000. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the LTC staff appraiser of 72,000 for the land, 38,000 for the improvement value, for 110,000 total value.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
I have a question. It has to do with when I paid the tax. I noted
That's not to us.
this has to do with pay under the what is it called? Yes.
So that would be something you take it with the Bureau of Treasury in Orleans Parish. Once the ruling is done and the change order is submitted to the city, they will send you an amended bill. You need to talk with the Bureau of Treasury. That's not under the bailiwick of either our office or the commission.
It's City Hall?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the appeal of Kurt A. Redmond versus Assessor L.G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221771108.
Hold on one second. Has to switch.
Sir, just stand up. I don't think you were here earlier when I swore you in. Raise your right hand. Swear affirm testimony about which truth that you can. I do. And your name? Kurt Redmond. Thanks.
Sure. You can go ahead.
Good morning. Louisiana Tax Commission heard this case on my properties for 115 28th Street, 119 28th Street in 2019. At that time, the State Board, after considering the documented evidence and testimony and considering the deplorable street conditions and flooding, lowered the property valuation to $200,000 per building They cited the conditions of the street negatively affecting property and land value, as well as flooding conditions that were apparent in 2019 by the evidence submitted. Since then, the city assessor raised the valuation initially almost 33% on each property, and now is raising the valuation to almost 100% since the value that was set by this commission in 2019. I have not been able to fight the previous years because I just can't afford the time away from my job. Nothing has been done since 2019, and the situation continues today. The street remains in terrible disrepair. It has not been touched, and the flooding conditions continue without relief. These items adversely affect the land value as well as the property value. Below are pictures of the May 9th, 2023 flooding that occurred on the street. And as you can see from the pictures, the constant flooding during every major rain event and the subsidence that has occurred has caused sidewalks to sink and crack. It constantly washes away landscaping and mulch. In addition, it deteriorates the layers of asphalt on the street and gets in between these layers, lifting them up. All one has to do is drive down 28th Street between Pontchartrain Boulevard and Fleur-de-Lis, and one can readily see the disrepair and neglect. These defects don't show up in appraisals or on any data used to assess value. There have been 3 water main breaks on the block within the past year. Now I ask you, how could property value be raised over $135,000 when this neglect and disrepair is allowed to continue? Nothing has been changed on the properties, and the city assessor continues to use a blanket reassessment increase using no data and no inspection pertinent to the property itself. This flooding makes it necessary for residents to move their cars from low-lying areas to higher ground, as evidenced by the white Jeep in the picture below. One neighbor had parked in front of the vacant lot next door, but had to run out in the middle of the downpour and move it to safer, higher ground as the floodwaters threatened to enter the car. I ask you what has changed since 2019 when the state board reduced the valuation to $200,000 per property, and I'll answer the question for you. Nothing. In fact, things have gotten much worse. Lakeview used to be one of the prettiest suburbs of the city. Its serene oaks and quiet neighborhoods attracted families that wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city so that they could enjoy a peaceful life, raise their families, and feel safe. All of that has been seriously affected. The crime statistics alone are a cause for shock. The police, with their dwindling numbers, can no longer keep these neighborhoods safe. Criminals know it and are taking advantage of the situation at alarming rates. This, too, negatively affects the valuation of housing in the neighborhood, but I see no reflection of that in the city assessor's data. Garbage collection, once an included service paid for by property taxes, is now a fee-for-service add-on to our monthly water bill, and even that service has dwindled to 1 collection per week, and recycling is no longer a reality. Has the fee been cut in half? Not a chance. How much are people supposed to take? What are we getting for the taxes that we are paying? The below pictures show street condition walking down 28th Street from Pontchartrain Boulevard to Fleur-de-Lis. So if you peruse through the pictures, you can see the condition of the street pretty much every 3 houses. Neighbors have resorted to filling up some of the depressions with concrete themselves, just trying to get past severe depressions in the street or sinkholes that they can't manage with their cars. As you can see from the above pictures, the street in its deplorable condition it was in back in 2019 with additional wear and tear now. The only repaved section is the entrance from Fleur-de-Lis at the very end of the block. As I stated before, nothing has changed. Conditions of the street are worse than some third world countries. And neighbors have resorted to dumping concrete into depressions in front of their house just to get by. This is the reason that I'm asking for the valuation to be lowered below the LTC appraiser's value. Nothing has changed, and if anything, aspects with regards to crime and car break-ins in the neighborhood have worsened. The LTC appraiser's value was set using comps prior to June of 2023, the date range he was restricted to. Comps sold in November and December of 2023 reflect lower values, more than likely due to higher interest rates, but they do more closely represent the 2024 valuation. With that, I'm concluded.
New Orleans City.
Yes, we're talking about 115 28th Street, right? 7-108. Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm considering them both because they're identical property. We'll do one at a time. Okay, great.
The assessor's office initially valued the property at $401,700. This is a multifamily property in the West Lakeview neighborhood. It was reduced slightly to a value of $394,500 at the board review. We did a fee simple appraisal on the property. That fee simple appraisal came in at $465,000. I was listening to the testimony by the taxpayer. We received no exhibits served to us by the taxpayer for either this hearing or the next one. So I can't comment as to anything because we didn't receive his exhibits timely. We provided a fee simple appraisal. That fee simple appraisal is $465,000. Where basically the tax commission's appraisal value, I think, is 8% less than what it's currently at. In all transparency, we did offer to settle for the tax commission's appraisal value. The taxpayer rejected it, so we're asking for the our initial valuation.
Can I
Just to clarify,
respond?
you're asking for your initial or the board of review?
I'm sorry, the board review.
Can I respond to that?
Can we hear? Mark, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. Mark Gillespie with the Tax Commission. I appraised the property at 115, 117 28th Street. I spoke with the taxpayer and I appraised this property before in the past. It's a repeat. The road, fronting road is an issue. If you look on my appraisal close to the end of the grid at the bottom on my appraisal page 5, you'll see I made significant adjustments to the comparables based on the fronting road. I studied the comps road condition, and you can see sale 1 was also it was actually in fair condition, but the subject is in poor condition, no doubt. I used the sales within the acceptable LTC appraisal practice range from January 1st of 2022. And so all the sales that I use are certainly within the time frame that's acceptable with the LTC. I did, of course, that was the sales comparison approach, came in at 360,000. I also performed a GRM approach and made appropriate adjustments to the sales. And due to the extremely poor condition of the subject's road frontage and I used the lower end of the range for GRM and the rent selected and determined that value to be 364,000. Reconciled at a value of 362,000. And also in addition, I did a land appraisal and made significant adjustments to the comps based on the extremely poor fronting road condition and determined the land value to be $20 a square foot. That puts the overall value of the property at $362,000, the land value at $144,000, improvement value at $218,000.
Thank you. Mr. Redmond, you want to come?
Yeah, no, I mean, the documents that I did upload to Orleans Tax Assessor's website, so I don't know what problems they had with obtaining documents from it, but all documentation was uploaded to their website when the initial appeal was filed.
We're going to agree to disagree on that.
What
We don't
I
have-
believe the issue is the issue all taxpayers are having. They're loading up something to the Moja Dispute Resolution Center that goes to the board review. They're not serving us with their exhibits. I think that's an issue that we're seeing.
Y'all should try to fix that.
I mean,
Make it
there's
much easier.
there's not much we can do. It goes to the board review. If they know they're filing an appeal, they should contact us. But I will look into that, sir.
Okay. Questions from the commission?
I have one question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Russell, help me understand this. I've
Okay.
noticed that the taxpayer mentioned several times about the street conditions in front of the property where he's at. Does the city of New Orleans know that these streets are in these conditions to where you guys can assess the property properly? Because how can you assess a property when the street condition is basically, and how long, Mr. Taxpayer, how long has this street been in this disarray for you being at that property?
I've been living I've been living on the street since 2009, and no repairs have been made to the street since I've been living there.
So does the city of New Orleans aware of this street that is in that condition?
Yes, one thing I would let's say is, welcome to New Orleans. The streets are horrible. The second thing I would say is,
The one thing we all agree on.
yeah. The other thing I would say is I'm very familiar with this. Our appeal center is at the Lakeview Christian Center, which is directly across the street from the entrance into this property. The sales that were done, Mr. Gillespie did a land sale study, which supports $20 a square foot, which is where we're at. So we're saying it's $20. The commission's saying it's $20. Independently, $20 is a good value. There's multiple ingress and egress. It's not like it's one ingress. Yeah, you got Fleur de Lis, but you got the other end from West Hammond Highway on the back end, and they got all the ingress and egress through Pontchartrain Expressway on the other side. So yes, it's Lakeview has horrible streets, but everybody's got horrible streets, and the sales actually would support a value higher. We just did a reduction due to condition at $20, and I think that's fair considering the independent analysis also confirms $20 a square foot.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I have two questions. For the taxpayer, we were provided with the 2019 decision that appears to me by the order of the tax commission that the total fair value was 266,000. You mentioned 200,000.
That's what it was set at in 2019 when I came before the Louisiana Tax Commission last time.
Right. So there's just a point of confusion. I have something from a 2019 docket as well at 266. So that doesn't need to be settled here. I just wanted to make sure that what I heard is what you were representing at 200.
Yes.
For the tax commission, Mr. Gillespie, just to confirm, Avenue A is a comparable, and across the board, as you discussed, you made adjustments based upon a condition of the road in comparison to the taxpayer. So the taxpayer is extremely poor condition. Avenue A, which is a comp between yourself and the assessor, is the next step up at fair, correct?
Yes, sir. That's right.
There's
Yes,
a
sir.
$53,500 adjustment on that comp. The adjusted sale price with that 53.5 included to 431,000.
Yes, sir.
And again, you had an income approach that came to 364,000.
That's right.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? And then do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the LTC staff appraisal based on their appraisal of the income and the sales, and also it's in line with the market analysis provided by the owner. And that would be a land value of $144,000, int value of $218,000, for a total value of $362,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is adopted.
Okay, our final appeal of the day is the appeal of Kirk A. Redmond versus Assessor L.G. Williams in the Orleans Parish Board of Review, docket number 23221771109.
Yeah. I mean, they're ditto properties. They really are.
Willing,
Yeah. Just to expedite this, it's the same property. He's good with the appraisal of the
of the
staff.
LTC?
We're
Okay.
good with it.
We have an agreement between the city of New Orleans and the taxpayer to accept the LTC appraiser. Is there any question from the commission on that? Before I say no objection, let's make a formal motion with the value so we get it for the record.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the LTC staff appraisal total of 362,000. It's 144,000 for the land, 218,000 for the improvements.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection?
Can I
Hearing none,
raise one
motion is-
question?
Oh,
So with the flooding and the street conditions, the land value is not going to be reevaluated at all?
I think the land value is, according to the city and our appraisal, there is some consideration for the land value that it is reduced than what it would be. I don't think you agree with that reduction, but there is some reduction in it.
No, sir, you're correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Okay, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is. Is there any other business to come before the commission today? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, have a motion to adjourn?
We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is adopted. We are adjourned at 10:25 a.m.